Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we're going to show you how our ARS rack works. So let's get started. Hey guys, so for those of you who are looking to set up a snake rack, it doesn't technically have to be one of these. You're trying to learn how to use a probe, how the thermostat works, how heat tape works, how the bins themselves actually work, and how you like to normally set them up. This video is for you. We're going to go over all of that. This specifically is an ARS rack. They normally come 10 tall, but we custom made this one a little bit shorter just because we don't have as much head space in here. The reason why ARS racks are nice is because they have these gray bins. They come mostly assembled. There are full videos that we've done on putting them together. These are pricey compared to, like, let's say a PVC rack. We do build PVC racks for people who don't have quite as large of a collection, but we will show you how these work. It's the same as how PVC work, especially when it comes to the heat tape and stuff. So the reason why, first of all, people choose racks over cages is, one, it seems that in my, 13, almost 14 years now of experience, I've tried all different types of cages, of setups, stuff like that, and these actually work the best by far. So you can also, when you buy from different companies, or like for example the PVC racks I have clear bins. The reason why these gray bins can be so nice is there's nothing in this bin. But it gives the snake comfort. A lot of people don't put hides, don't put anything in here. They just have, they order the bins like this that have the built-in water dish, and that's all they do. I like to add a little bit more. So I like these water bowls from Walmart because the snake, no matter how big, can still get underneath there. Sometimes they'll push it up really high because he's a very large snake underneath, but I like this because they can soak. They can get in here, especially when it's females and it's certain times of the breeding season. Younger ones can fully soak in here during shed. I like to put that in the front of the bin. In the very back of racks, that's where the heat tape is. We'll get into that in a moment. Most people don't include hides in their racks. I already had them for my old rack, so I figured why not. And 9 times out of 10, you open one of these bins and they're under their hide. So I find that they still like their hide, they're still comfortable, it still helps them. From switching to the clear bins to this bin, I haven't seen much of a difference other than the fact when you open it, they're much more on high alert of, oh, they think food's coming, because they go from completely secluded, which there is still light getting in around this whole way. There's vent holes on top of all of this which allow light in as well. These guys see mostly thermal, so they're seeing, you know, the heat signature of my big body opening the cage, and they go, oh, okay, there's food. And I've had really good food responses with these. I did like my clear racks because I could see where the snake were. I could just look without actually opening and bothering them. Okay, she's over here, she has water, he's got this. I liked that, but for, again, space purposes, these racks worked a lot better for me than going and building a ton of them. But when it comes to these, you can also buy them clear though. So people who don't think, you know, they want their snake to see out, the problem with that is it stresses them out. Just because we like to see, for example, ball pythons, we like to see them moving around. Oh, they look happy because they're moving. In the wild, they mostly just hide. They just find a log to go underneath, especially when they're babies and when they're younger. So just because we want to see them because that's something humans like, doesn't necessarily mean that's what's best for the animal. You can have a snake that lives in a glass tank for 20, 30 years and, you know, it acts perfectly okay, but just because it's living doesn't mean it's thriving. So the difference between these racks and the PVC ones generally just have a shelf here and they'll slide on the shelf. These actually have tracks on each side. That's why they have the lips right here, and these are very firm bins, so it supports it. And you slide it in. Again, there's an air hole, an air slot, and there's ventilation holes. You can get, these are 50% ventilation, or you can get 100% ventilation. I like to keep a little bit extra heat in there, so we have 50%, but again, air still getting in through here and through the very top as well. So again, how these slightly differ, we'll look at that rack, since it's a little bit easier to see. So you can see these panels of metal right here. This has the heat tape incorporated inside. Trying to think if I have any heat tape in here. I don't, but here's pictures. I did a whole video specifically on heat tape, all this type of stuff. Heat tape is one of the best ways to actually heat your reptiles. It can be safe if done properly. Another big thing that's nice about these is the heat tape is inside this enclosed piece of metal, and you can upgrade and pay a little extra money to get insulation in the bottom so all the heat's going upright, and then you can put your probe directly onto the metal right here. I will find wherever it is over here to show you. We're going to go off-roading for a minute. Little tip, put an arrow wherever your probe is. If my camera would focus. Alright, so when it comes to big racks like this is actually what's recommended. The reason why is this one comes with 2 probes. There's lots of different brands. This is the one I like. This one's brand new. We've got a backup so we can replace one of the older ones we have. So, this is what happens when you get your own thermostat. This is the power cord. This plugs right into the thermostat. This is the thermostat itself. You can set it depending on what kind you get. You can set it different ways. You can have night drop modules, which means at nighttime you have a different temperature, which is really good for breeding season. You could drop the cages a few degrees at night, which tends to get them to think it's winter. It's a good way to get them to start breeding. But this is simply what a probe is. So it's just a long wire with this hard part at the end. So when this plugs into the thermostat, this right here plugs into it. You put this on your heat tape, on your metal, on your whatever heating source, and you plug the heat tape directly into that thermostat. So when this happens, whatever this is touching, let's say you set it to 90 degrees, until where this probe is touching hits 90 degrees, it will keep the heat tape on and running. So when you can get into issues is if you don't securely fasten your probe, and it lifts up like this and it's no longer connected, it's still going to keep heating this heat tape until it gets 90 degrees. So now it's got to be molten hot to get, this probe that's not even attached anymore to 90 degrees, which means you can get into things like melting your tubs, starting fires, having big issues like that. That is the downside of these. But it is safe if done properly. So I have to look. I can't remember exactly who I bought these from, but somebody printed these on their 3D printer. And the way it works, this one doesn't work for my hatchling rack because that's a different size panel. But how this works is, this actually will clip, this only works for ARS racks, but it'll clip with these down onto your ARS rack. This probe fits through the hole, clicks in, clicks here, and then holds it down. So now your probe is always against the metal panel. I use these on these ARS racks, the ones that it worked on, and I also still taped it just as a precaution. Used black electrical tape, still taped it to it, put this on there, and then again, just as a precaution, I taped it one more time. Make sure you know where your probes are. Every single week, at least once a week, go around, check your racks, especially if you have a lot of racks, stuff like that. Check your probe and make sure it hasn't fallen off. Make sure something like, for example, for these ARS racks, every single shelf has its own metal panel. So right now I've only got babies in the top 2, nothing's in the bottom. Only these 2 are running because only these 2 are plugged into the thermostat. Well, if I decided to put my probe on this 3rd level down but then unplugged it, now the probe isn't on where it's supposed to be. It's just going to keep heating and you're going to have molten lava on these and they're going to burn your bins. So make sure your probe is on one of the levels that are actually turned on if you're using something like this that has different heat for different levels. If you're going serious with reptiles, you're trying to get a bunch, you think you want to do it as a hobby level, whatever, you really care about your animals, this is why I recommend the VE 300 times 2. The reason why we like this, it comes with 2 probes. So if you've got a tall rack like this, you can have a probe on this level and a probe towards the bottom, and it individually heats whatever you have set. So let's say the top 5 bins are on one probe, bottom 5 are on one probe, you're going to get a more consistent heat. Another thing is this one, I can't remember exactly what it's called, digital pulse proportional dual zone thermostat. So the reason why the pulse proportional solid state thermostat. That is what we really like. And the reason for that is, this is the old one that we're changing. See how that says 32, this is a VE100, which is great if you've only got a few snakes and you're not using a huge rack like this. See how it says the probe's at 32, but I have it set at, probe set at 92, but it's supposed to be 93, but it's only reading 92. This is one of the ones like I just showed you. See how it's consistently beeping because I've only got zone 1 on. See how it says 91, 91, and the zones can, so there's, when it comes to this rack, or this thermostat for this rack, it's constantly keeping it at the same 91 temperature. It's constantly pulsing and going, okay, keep it at 91. When it comes to this one, the way it works is the temperature heats up, hits the temperature, turns off. It lets it go down a few degrees, kicks back on. So that VE100 actually runs just like your furnace. Once it gets a little too cold, it kicks on, heats everything up, hits the temperature it's supposed to, turns back off, and then repeats. When it comes to this pulse proportional one, which is what I'm switching everything to, it will constantly set out a little signal to make sure it stays at the proper temperature. And the other reason for this, it's like $300-400 for one of these, instead of like $80 for one of those, is as soon as I set my rack up, the baby one, day one, the sensor kept, or the alarm kept going off. Didn't even know it had an alarm. Alarm kept going off, saying overheating. Wasn't making any sense. And you always want to get these racks up and running and messed with and tuned in before putting snakes in. So it kept shutting it off after every 5 minutes. Well, I did what I just warned you guys about. I put the probe, let's say here, but I only had these two plugged in, so these were heating up hotter than what this thinks it should have. So I don't know if it got to 100, 110, whatever degrees, and then it would shut itself off because it's too hot for what this, whatever internal settings are. And the probe was still reading as very cold, so it kept setting off an alarm and actually shutting off everything. Luckily, that was the day that we were in here working on it, testing it, making sure that, you know, things were working properly, so nothing was damaged, nothing was hurt, but this works fantastic. I've always said the VE100s are great, especially if you only got a few snakes, but if you are trying to become a breeder or, you know, doing this at a hobby level, you really, really love your animals, I highly recommend this. Hopefully this helps you guys out if you're interested in getting a rack system and heating it, stuff like that. If you like what you saw, please hit that subscribe button. We do a few videos every single week, so I'll see you guys in the next video.